Right, guys, welcome to another podcast. Today, I'm more than delighted to be joined with DM Fitness Dave Marsh. I've known Dave a long time. We went to school together, we played rugby together. Actually, my first training partner, fun fact for you guys. So this will be a very good podcast. We've got a lot in common. We've both got online businesses. We're both, personal trainers as well. And I know that David, his extensive knowledge in this field is going to be very valuable to you guys. So I'll let Dave just introduce himself for a little bit, and then we'll jump into some questions for you guys. Dave?
Cool. Thanks, Josh. Hey, guys. Thanks for having me on. More than a pleasure to be on and provide you guys with some information. As Josh said, me and Josh have known each other since we were kids. Obviously went to Marlin together, grew up, and were first training partners. A little bit about me. So I've been a personal trainer now for kind of 5.5 years. Up until last year, I just focused on the kind of one-to-one stuff, and then I've grown my business. So I now have 2 people working with me. I've got an online fitness business in now, and this year was my first time competing. So I stepped on stage at the UK BFF South Coast, placing, I had second call outs, and I am going to be competing again later in the year with Josh, hopefully at Birmingham. So that's going to be an interesting one. Absolutely.
Great. So yeah, we'll just the way I like to structure these things is just a little bit of a conversation. Hopefully we can both add value where we need to add value. I've got some questions from kind of my listeners, my Instagrammers, so we can just kind of delve through those, split them up into diet and then training, and then maybe Dave can ask me some questions, and then maybe I'll ask Dave some questions. So that's just the general run through how it's going to go. All of the tags for questions will be in the description box, so you can click the questions that you want to see. And we'll jump straight into it. So first of all, questions from the viewers in terms of diet. I know you're a big advocate of if it fits your macros and kind of just playing with that pyramid.
Yep.
So I'd love to know, just from your perspective, what is if it fits your macros, and why do people use it?
Cool. So if it fits your macros, is obviously it's a way of kind of flexible dieting. So something I'm a real big fan of because it doesn't put too much constraints on your food choices. So obviously, if we look at macronutrients, your main thing is calories. So making sure you are sticking to the, your desired amount of calories. If you are looking to lose weight, then you need to be in that calorie deficit. Then we look at your main macronutrients, so hitting your protein targets. So for me, I usually go for around kind of 2 times body weight to 2.5 times body weight, and then going into your carbohydrates. And then we'll look at making that up with the rest of your calories when we've taking away your fat content as well. Obviously, I go for a kind of 80-20 rule. So 80% of my diet comes from kind of whole food nutrition, and then 20% I'm a little bit more flexible on, allowing yourself that kind of a let off as such. But also it means lifestyle constraints. So if you are going out for a meal, it means that you don't have to panic about that. So you can go out for that and think, actually, I'm not going to sit in and think I'm on a diet. I can't do that. You just got to account for it. So it gives you that more flexibility in your lifestyle, so you're not kind of restricting yourself too much.
Absolutely. And I think that's one big thing that a lot of people can take from is the kind of the adherence thing, and a lot of people doing 100% clean diet is not adherable, and you can't be doing chicken, rice, broccoli 3 times a day, 4 days, 7 days a week for 365. It doesn't work like that. We're all human. We all have cravings. We all have to be in social situations with different people. And just having that 80-20 rule and that if it fits your macros allows for you to go to these social situations. You don't need to cave yourself off to anything like that. And it's such a massive thing in the industry at the moment, if it fits your macros debate. And I'm definitely an advocate of it, just like Dave is.
Good.
And yeah, you briefly touched on kind of your macro and calorie split. Would you use that for all of your clients, or would you change that depending on kind of their goals and anything else that they're kind of looking to do?
To be honest, when I work with my clients, I actually like having a lower fat approach. So, similar to normal diets, just because of the food volume.
Yep.
So, a lot of people that do my kind of online coaching and, clients I certainly work with, we look at their diet and they think they're eating well. And, they're having things like, your avocado, your coach cheese salads, things like that. I think, I'm making smart choices. But actually, the calorie content of that is high due to the fat content. So, I try and change their food choices so they're being smarter with what they're food, so it's not as calorie-dense food. And therefore, they're still eating a high food volume, but, the actual calorie content of it is a lot lower. So getting rid of things like your nut butters and things like that, it's just simple choices that will help you to lose that body fat.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, yeah, you touched on a little bit on the low-fat diet. What's your thoughts on a keto diet? Because I've had a few questions recently about a keto diet. For one, I don't know enough about it. I don't know enough about the science behind it, but I can't really see a world where I'm going to do that. So I'd love to know your opinion on that.
Yeah, in terms of keto diets, I don't particularly like it. I have done a low carb diet before. I felt horrendous. I didn't have energy to train. Therefore, I lost a lot of muscle because I wasn't able to sustain the intensity of my training. Yeah, okay, it did get me, fairly lean when I experimented a little bit with it, but I didn't have any energy. My mood was down, etc. And in terms of athletic performance, yeah, the research shows, especially from like Brad Schoenfeld, they just released a paper about it affecting that carbohydrates are important for your performance. So therefore, if you're an athlete, then you need carbs. As simple as that. Yeah. Obviously, it takes 3 days for your body to go into a state of ketosis where you start breaking down fats. One of my clients at the moment, he's actually diabetic, so his diet is completely keto, and he runs marathons on a keto diet, and that's manipulating insulin and things like that. So that's quite interesting. But for the kind of general population, and obviously if you are an athlete and trained individual, I don't see any benefit from doing it.
Cool, great. This is pretty much what I was gonna say as well. I mean, I do see a lot of ultra kind of marathon runners and super long events that seem to be doing a lot of fats. I mean, I assume it's because of the higher calorie content, the low density, and just the sustained energy. So I imagine that's why, if anything. But yeah, when you're doing these short, intense kind of sessions, okay, you're still maybe going up to 2 hours, but it's still pretty intense in the scheme of things. So
yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And then that kind of leads into like another question of carb cycling. Do you use it? Have you used it? Do you implement it ever with your clients? And when would you, if you were to?
Carb cycling isn't something that I've personally done or tried. I like to stay fairly consistent with macronutrients because it makes it easy for my lifestyle. So I keep calories and carbohydrate intake exactly the same, and then when I am feeling depleted, then I will implement a refeed. When my intensity of training sessions drop and energy levels drop, then I'll put in a carb refeed where I need it. But in terms of carb cycling, people like to use it maybe higher carbs on a leg day, lower carbs. At the end of the day, it will balance out to exactly the same. So it's easier for you in terms of lifestyle to keep it consistent rather than worrying to try and balance out different days. If it's over the period of a week, it's probably going to balance out to be exactly the same when you kept it the same anyway. And that's the more important thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one thing that you could do, when Dave said kind of having higher carbs on the leg day. If you're into powerlifting or strongman and you've got like a heavy lift day and you've got like heavy deadlift, you're going up to 90% of maximum efforts, you use that day as your higher carb day or your higher calorie day. And when you're kind of doing the kind of accessory work, you can probably afford to kind of back up on the calories a little bit, and that can be your kind of dieting technique. I've used that with a few powerlifters trying to cut for competitions. It seems to work, but yeah, exactly. End of the week calories versus input, calorie input versus calorie output. It's always gonna level out eventually anyway. So, question about vegetables. This is just from me. Do you count them into your macros?
I do actually, yeah. I do actually put them in, yeah. I mean, especially when I am dieting for competition, I eat a lot more kind of green vegetables, so I get rid of things like your peppers and things like that.
Yeah.
Go for more kind of your brown rices, etc. That kind of higher fiber, so they fill you up more. But I do definitely count them. Yeah. There's certain vegetables that obviously are a lot higher calorie than you actually think. So when you kind of start missing out that, especially when you get to finite detail, I think it's more important.
Yeah.
But if you're not stepping on stage, then it's not too much to worry about.
Yeah, absolutely. Such a kind of a high volume, low calorie kind of thing. As long as you're kind of consistent, you don't need to worry about too much about that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Awesome. So yeah, do you ever play with carb timings? Is that a thing that you do, or do you just kind of again keep kind of even across the day because you need that sustained energy or something like that?
I wouldn't say I play around with carbohydrate timings as such, but I certainly play around with the type of carbohydrate I have.
Okay.
So, I mean, for me, I tend to have my higher GI carbs around my workouts, again, especially when I'm in a calorie deficit. So, things like, pre-training, I will have, pineapple. It's obviously, high GI, high sugar. Obviously, pineapple has also been shown to have benefits in terms of recovery. So contains something called creatine, which helps reduce muscle soreness, so the breakdown of muscle fibers. So that's really good to have in. And then also post-workout, I have, say, 3 caramel rice cakes. And even the first 8 to 10 weeks of my prep, I think I was having 50 grams of Haribo sometimes post-workout. And that's more for the kind of energy levels. So, when you're in a calorie deficit, you are going to have days where you're feeling tired. Is there any benefit to that in terms of, oh, it's anabolic? No, it's not. but for your own energy levels, it does help. So having that little kind of high spike in your blood sugar levels will obviously give you the energy to train and help pick you back afterwards. Because you are going to be training intensely, and you want your training intensity to be as good and maintainable throughout the calorie deficit as you possibly can. So therefore, the other meals I tend to have, your lower GI carbs, so oats in the morning, brown rice in the evening, and then actually before bed I wasn't having any carbohydrates, so it was just dark chocolate and a protein shake. So that just worked for me.
Yeah, awesome. And yeah, so kind of the way this is being described to me, it seems like a very smart approach, and I think that's something that people need to understand when coming to dieting, is that you can be smart about it. Yeah, you can train hard, yeah, you can diet hard, and you're still going to get shredded, and you're still going to be super lean, but you're not going to feel as optimally as you can do. So kind of being efficient, being smart, being clever with the way you set things up, playing with the high GI carbs, the low GI carbs, fitting in things where they work around your lifestyle is all part and parcel of the prep. No one prep is going to be the same as another prep. My prep this year is not going to be the same as Dave's prep this year. Different lifestyles, different things, so it's always going to kind of be adaptable to the person as well. So definitely important to kind of learn your process and learn what works for you as well along the lines. So in terms of training, how would you create a workout split for your clients?
So first of all, I'd obviously look at all your different movements. So I'd look at your horizontal, push, pull, verticals, etc. So making sure you're hitting every single movement. So push, pull, lunge, squat, lift, etc. Making sure they're incorporating all of those factors into the workouts. And then look at obviously the different movements through that. So take through different planes of motion, so frontal plane, transversal plane, etc. And then also looking at how often they can train. So the workout split I will give those clients is dependent on how many sessions they can fit in a week. So I mean, for most people now, time is a limiting factor. So for most people, they're going to be able to train like 2 or 3 times a week. Therefore, their workouts are probably going to include every single movement into that workout.
Yeah.
And that's how I will structure it. Obviously, we all know that the research suggests that you need to be hitting muscle groups at least twice a week to see, substantial muscle growth. And therefore, it's important to make sure you are, taking those muscles to fatigue and failure. So with a lot of my workouts, I keep it quite intense just to get the desired volume in. So for my clients, there'll be a lot of supersets, sometimes giant sets, drop sets, etc. Incorporating those kind of training methods to make sure they're getting the desired overload principle into their workouts to create that stimulus and see results.
Awesome. And would you, obviously your training with them would be one-to-one. Do you monitor their lifts? Do you track their lifts as they go, or would that be something that they do themselves?
In terms of tracking lifts, it depends again on their goals. So obviously we're going to see improvements from that generally. I wouldn't say I specifically track their lifts in terms of like squat, deadlifts, etc. To be honest, as long as their weight is increasing and they're progressing, then I don't necessarily track it on that scale as such, because most people, they don't want to be a powerlifter, they don't want to be a strongman. Obviously, as long as they're seeing that change and they're seeing their list progressing, that's the most important thing. I look at more to do with their kind of lifestyle and movement patterns, so they're moving better, they're seeing the right areas develop, and they're getting a well balanced physique.
Yeah, absolutely, that makes sense. And how often would you change the training program for them, or would you at all?
Yeah, this is a good question, and it's one thing that has cropped up massively recently is how often should you change a training plan. And as long as you are continuing to see development and using the principles of progressive overload, then realistically you don't really need to change that plan. I'd say 3 to 4 months. So, give it a good spell to see that desired change. See, a lot of people jump in between, I want to be a strong man, I want to be, this, I want to be that. And they don't stick with a training plan long enough to see that adaptation. I mean, throughout my, my prep this year, so it was, 16 weeks, so 4 months, I did not change that plan at all.
Yeah.
I just kept going through my microcycles, each week, changing the rep ranges on, the bigger lifts to kind of continue to see that development. And I actually grew during a calorie deficit. My delts grew, my lats grew, and I completely changed my body shape in that 4 month period because I stuck out a training plan consistently to see those changes happen.
Yeah. I'm so glad you just said that at the end, like you grew in a deficit. I was such a bro back in the day. I mean, 2 years ago, it was like, okay, I'm eating 4,000 calories, I'm gaining weight. Okay, right, I'm gonna lose weight now. 3,200 calories. That's it. No more muscle's gonna be built. That was it. Like that was my head. I'd switched off that. I'd switched off that. I'm not building any more muscle, guys. That is bullshit. I'll say that right now.
I agree.
Last year, I definitely dwindled towards the end, but during the main body of my prep, like I was getting stronger. I was growing. I felt bigger. I felt leaner. I felt harder, and it's all down to the training program, guys.
I agree.
Like monitoring your volume, monitoring the frequency, not over burning out. Often it is in fact that if you're going into a deficit, you probably reduce the volume a little bit so you can progress and you can move forward. And it's absolutely amazing. I see it a lot now. These guys just burning themselves out. Really all you're doing is just depleting glycogen and affecting the next day's training, and that's all it is. So having a solid training program through a deficit, let alone anyway, is something that I have learned more than anything this year, and the value of. Or people always used to say, oh, it's all diet, most of it's diet. So like I'm kind of starting to think that some of it's training now. And I'm really enjoying the process of learning more and more about kind of microcycles, macrocycles in the scheme of a year. And how to develop those, and that's something that I'm really excited to learn. So it's exciting to hear that from you. So yeah, I mean, I'd love to probe a little bit about that micro and macro cycle that you're just talking about. Like, how did you change your rep ranges on your core lifts that kind of allowed that development?
Good question. I tell you what, I will actually bring up my plan right now and let's see what I did. Let's find it, shall we? Training. Here we go. Cool. Okay, so in terms of the compound list, so obviously compound list, you're looking to maintain as much strength as possible. So day one for me, I would back squat. Day two for me, day one I would back squat and rack pull. Day two I would sumo deadlift and incline bench press.
Yep. Day
three I'd bent over row and then also T-bar row. So there'd be my two heavies on that. Day four, again, dumbbell bench press and a hip thrust. And then day five, shoulder press, just shoulder press on that one. And how I'd work that is week one would be 4 working sets of 8 reps. Week two, you go 4 working sets, so aiming for kind of 8 to 12 reps. So again, sticking with the same weight, but adding more volume on that. Week 3, you go down 6 sets of 5 reps. And then week 4, I'd go just 3 sets of 8 to 12 reps. And then I'd repeat that.
Yep.
So that was what I'd do for the kind of bigger, obviously, compound list as such. So I'm trying to keep strength and push that weight on those and see that kind of change in development. And then the other exercises, so the more isolation exercises, I kind of stick between the 8 to 15 rep range. So, first week I'd go 8, second week 8 to 12, third week, 12, 15, etc. Yep. And then go back in on the last week. So I'd have almost like a slight deload, so 3 sets of kind of 8 reps, and then continue to kind of go through those cycles every 4 weeks. Yep. And that's how I kind of structure my training plan.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, so I'm pretty similar when I structure my training plans for clients, and at the moment my current training program is similar, a little bit different but similar, a similar principle. So it's very much like I have an A and a B session, as opposed to kind of A, B, C session, which is essentially what you're kind of doing. And it's just rotating through those. Like if you're doing that same leg session every single week, twice a week for 6 weeks, it's going to become very, very difficult to progress. If you're doing the same rep ranges every single week and just trying to progress that while you're in a deficit, it's going to become very, very difficult. So kind of adding that variation and that rotation of exercise or that rotation of rep ranges just allows for that continued progression. So I'd never go back to the same session every week. It's always every other week that I go back to that same session, and I'm always progressing on that, and it's something that I've really enjoyed this year, to be honest. So have you developed that plan that you yourself, that training cycle yourself?
Yes.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Was there like a process to that, or was that just from research and everything like that? Yeah.
Yeah, through research, again, looking at the kind of areas that I needed to develop for men's physique. So obviously previously, you know, I focused a lot on kind of my compound movements. You know, I competed in strongman last year. So obviously my training routine was completely different for training for that than it was for training for the kind of strongman. So it was just completely... Oop. Sorry. It was just completely changing how I wanted to develop things. So looking at, obviously, a men's physique, you need to work on your delts, your lats, etc., creating that kind of V shape. So I wanted to high frequency on those certain areas as well.
Yeah, and I think that's something to say. I mean, different goals and different kind of competitions that you're going into, I often get the question, "Oh, what's your training split?" And I'm sure you do the same. What's your training split, bro? I want to be like you. You know, what I do, it will not work for you. Like, it might not work for you. It might work, but you know, odds are it's designed for me, and it's designed for me specifically in men's physique. If you're just trying to be the healthy everyday gym goer, you don't need to be doing a men's physique split. You need to be doing, you know, much different splits and like that. And the same for powerlifting, and the same for strongman. So guys, you don't always need to ask what I'm doing as my workout split. Maybe ask like, what's an optimal workout split, or what should I be aiming to do? And the answer is frequency. You know, frequency is king in the natural athlete and in any athlete, and in fact. So you just work off those main principles of progressive overload, frequency, and kind of managing your volume a little bit. You're not really going to go too wrong. So
yeah.
I'd love to move into a little bit about rest days. How often did you take a rest day during your prep? And how often would you take a rest day not in prep?
Good question. So in prep, for me, I was always taking a rest day on a Sunday. But again, I was still active on that day. So, you know, I'll go for a long walk, etc. So, you know, although I was taking a rest day from lifting weights, I was still active and still burning calories on that day as well. In terms of rest days when I'm not in a calorie deficit, actually, I still take one, but sometimes I won't. So, I mean, I'm not so strict with myself in terms of taking rest days if I don't need one, or, you know, if I want to fit an extra session, maybe do some extra lifts, etc. One thing, you know, when I am in calorie surplus, I might do a day of like Olympic lifts and things like that. So, you know, just hitting the muscles in a completely different way of stimulus. So Olympic lifts is something that I actually didn't do at all really during my prep. Obviously, I still hit squats and rack pulls and things, but I wasn't, you know, deadlifting conventionally and things like that. So, you know, when I am in a calorie surplus as such, or maintenance, then I will go back to kind of heavy compounds.
Yeah, absolutely. And how often would you? Okay, maybe not for your clients, but for someone who's competing, or yourself if you're competing, how often would you implement a deload, or how often would you kind of schedule a kind of a training break as such, if at all?
Again, that's very dependent on the person and client. Every person's very individual, and again, we're relating that back to how smart your training program is. You know, if you are smart with your training program in terms of the rep ranges, etc., then you shouldn't really be needing to take a complete rest week. And I'm a big advocate. Throughout my prep, I did not take a rest week at all. Obviously, you know, Prep and Jess as well, she didn't take a rest week at all. And, you know, that was the way the plan was structured, so you could maintain it through the duration of the prep. Obviously, towards the end of prep, you know, when you get into that finite detail, you are going to pick up a few niggles and injuries. So, I mean, you know, I had a few niggles with my wrists and things like that, just where, you know, you've been in that calorie deficit for a long time. But other than that, I didn't need to take a deload week or rest week. Yeah. Usually, you know, if you are looking to progress, especially with strength training, I mean, when I was prepping my strongman training, etc., then that was a completely style of training, and that had a bigger fatigue on my joints and CNS system, and therefore a deload week was more necessary. So where you're constantly hammering, you know, heavy weights, you know, that's going to have a bigger impact on your body in terms of stress levels, and therefore, you know, for me, I did need to incorporate deload weeks where I would, you know, just do 3 sessions of, you know, 3-4 sets, 8 to 12 reps, avoiding compounds, just doing isolation and getting blood flow into the muscle. And that's how I kind of incorporate a deload week if I need to.
Yeah, absolutely. And it always reverts back to this idea of just smart training, just like Dave said, guys. I'm an advocate of going balls to the wall kind of training, but if you're extending that beyond what your real actual limit is, and kind of in terms of don't want to say overtraining, but if you kind of extend that volume to just places where you can't handle it and you're not recovering well, and it's affecting training the next day and the following week, that's when you need to kind of take a look back and take a step at your training plan. Because if you feel like you need to just like take a break, odds are you're probably just doing it overkill, and you could just do with addressing your volume just for a more efficient process of building muscle. And that's something that I've really looked at this year. I used to be doing 50, 60 sets a session last year, and I used to just kill myself. I don't even know what I was doing. I feel like a new man this year. So yeah. So that's pretty much the questions in terms of diet and training. I'm sure some will prop up as we go along. Did you want to go through any questions, or should I do some questions?
If you want to fire away with yours, and then I've got a few for you as well.
Yeah, sure. So as I'm heavily into the kind of competing world, I'd love to probe your competing side a little bit. So how did you originally set up your macros, calories, and training and cardio, and then how did that develop and change over the course of your prep?
Cool, good question. So in terms of my macronutrients, I went in pretty hard. So a bit like you, I like to go balls to the wall. So I was like, right, okay, I really want to go for it in 8 weeks and see what I can do. So I like a kind of like blast and cruise method. So for the first 8 weeks of my prep, I went in. and I went pretty hard. So I went straight down to, I think it was 2,700 calories, about 200 grams of protein, 300 grams of carbs, and 60 grams of fat. So I went pretty low, pretty quick. Yeah. I had done like a pre-diet phase, so I was slowly coming down towards the end of last year and getting myself, I think I got myself to about 93 kilos. And then within the first 8 weeks of my prep, I got down to about 85 or 84, 85. Yeah. So, you know, I went pretty intense with that. In terms of the cardio, for me, it was just building it up. So, I mean, I'm pretty active anyway. I'm on my feet all day, etc. So, I mean, I started off, I think it was like 20 minutes 3 times a week, and then just slowly brought it up as the kind of weight kind of balanced out. But what I actually did was after the first 8 weeks, I had a week back at maintenance calories. So eased off the gas a little bit, had a week at maintenance calories, and then I went balls deep for the last kind of 6 weeks.
Yeah, nice.
5, 6 weeks, and that's how I kind of structured it. Yeah. But in terms of the macronutrients throughout the prep, I mean, I didn't really change them much until the last 2-3 weeks, and that's when obviously I started kind of dropping the carbohydrates out just to dry out a little bit and manipulating water and things like that. Just to do that side of things. But other than that, they stay pretty consistent throughout the prep.
Yeah. It sounds like a very similar situation to the way my preps have always been. Just a matter of tapering up and tapering down food and cardio, and just kind of giving yourself enough time to be able to get in shape. Because I find people, I get a lot of messages saying, okay, I want to compete in this competition. Great, let's send me some pictures over, send me your weight, send me your training history, send me your diet history, let's see what we can do. And they want to compete in 12 weeks, they're 20 kilos over stage weight, and it's just, I don't want to put you through what you need to go through to do that. So just being realistic with your time. For me, if you're going to do your first prep, I'd always recommend 16 plus weeks, just to kind of give yourself the easiest ride, because until you're kind of a bit more experienced with the depth of prep and the feeling of how you're going to feel, I wouldn't push a really, really harsh prep on you, just because it does get tough, and until you're used to it, it's going to be a bit difficult. But yeah, perfect. So how did you find that experience on stage? Because I mean, I'm sure it's like, I mean, being your first one, kind of getting all glazed up, getting all your hair off. I know you're a hairy guy as well. How was the whole experience?
It was different. I mean, you know, it was pretty nerve-wracking. I think that the day before, I spent a long time getting rid of my hair. I think Jess came into the bathroom and was like, Jesus Christ, have you killed a bear in here? In the hotel room, which is quite funny. And then getting the actual spray tan, that was weird for me. I mean, we turned up at 9:30, obviously not knowing what to expect. I got taken into a back room, and it was like being in a Nazi camp, so a concentration camp. So there was a lot of bodybuilders stood there in their white fronts and pants, not saying a word, getting sprayed up, and I just got told to, all looking at words. I just got told to get down to my pants and stand in the corner, and then there was no conversation. It was very strange. You got all the guys stood there, checking, like kind of looking you up and down. You know how it is. And so that was really weird. I mean, the actual day itself, I mean, if anyone's actually been and watched a bodybuilding competition or physique show, it is quite strange. You sat there watching everyone step on stage, come on, do their thing or whatever, and you're thinking, I'm going to be up there doing it. And then when it actually comes to being on stage, I was actually really anxious, and it's not something I usually kind of get, but it is a really odd experience. You don't know what to expect. And I actually find it hard to hear the guys when they're going, saying quarter turn to the right, etc. I didn't really hear that. I don't know whether it's because I was anxious or what, and not confident with it. But yeah, it was hard. I mean, that is the one thing why I want to compete again, is because I feel as though I could be a lot more relaxed on stage and a lot more confident with that. And I think that's just one of the things that comes with experience. Obviously, Jess, she placed first call-outs, and then we put her in for the week after so she would feel a lot more relaxed, and she did just from the kind of second time around. Obviously placed first for that, which was great. So, I mean, I think it's one of the things, the more you do it, the more you get used to it and the feeling of it being more relaxed. But again, you just don't know what to expect. It certainly is different, but it was enjoyable, but I know I can do better than what I did.
Absolutely. And so would you say that from doing that, you've got a goal this year with competing?
Oh, yes. 100%. So obviously my goal, I want to place top 3 and get an invite to the British finals. Obviously I set the mark now. I know what my condition was, and I'm going to go a lot further than that this time. So I'm looking forward to improve that condition and better myself. So come in a lot leaner, and also I want to be fuller as well. So I mean, I only did a one day carb up for the show, when realistically I probably could have done with a 2-day carb up. So it's just knowing your body as well. First time at anything, it's never going to be a perfect run. So it's seeing what works for you, seeing how your body responds to certain nutrients, and getting used to it as well.
Yeah, something massive to take from that point there is it's just every time you do it, it's probably going to be different, and you're going to learn something new from the last time. Like I remember the first time I did it, I loaded on 1,000 grams of carbs the night before. I came in with an absolute bubble butt. Came in with a big bloated belly, and I couldn't even keep tight. I was like, what's going on? I felt watery, but really I was flat because my body couldn't do anything with that amount of carbs. Second time I did it, split it over 2 days, felt great, and the final time did it over 3 days, felt even better. So, kind of each prep just gets better and better, and each diet you do will get better and better. Each training method you do will get better and better. So each thing you do, just take some notes from it, see what works, see what doesn't work, throw it out the window, try something new. So if you could give the standard question here, if you could give one piece of advice for someone who's going to do their first competition after you've done your first competition, what would you give to them?
Just give yourself, a lot of time. Time is a big one, so give yourself enough time and don't panic. Stepping on stage is one hell of an achievement in itself. People don't realize what you have to go through, the sacrifices you have to make to actually get to that condition, to be able to step on stage. It's a big, constraint. It's a lot of time dedicated. So to actually step on stage is a big achievement, and a lot of people put too much pressure on themselves to do well in their first show. When really, your achievement is stepping on that stage. You should not matter. It shouldn't matter where you place or how you do. That should not be your what you're thinking about. It should be, I've done this. This is me. It's an experience. I'm going to learn from it and take it forward to the next show.
Yeah, that's so true. That's really, really, really valuable there, guys. The first show is never about coming first, second, third, fourth, fifth. It doesn't matter. It's just about the process and the transition that you have to go through mentally as well as physically. In the 12 weeks, the 16 weeks, the 20 weeks you've been dieting is phenomenal, and you should really take a lot from that. I know a few people that, even my girlfriend right now, she's panicking at the moment because, she doesn't know how she's going to place. I'm like, don't worry about that. Look how far you've come. Look how amazing you've done so far. And just know that 99% of the people in the world can't do that. And it's very, very difficult to do. So, be proud of that fact and just bask in it on stage. That's what I say.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I had a lot of pressure on me. I mean, people, they make comments, oh, yeah, you're looking really good, you can do really well. You don't want to hear that.
Yeah,
because you just don't want to hear that because it's putting more pressure on you. Yeah. And, people are like, yeah, you're going to do really well, really well. What do you want to place? What do you want to place? It's like, I don't care. I really don't care. Yeah. I am stepping on stage because I didn't do it last year, and that, for me, was an achievement to step on stage this year. So this time, now I want to place, and I want to see what I can do.
Exactly.
So
you set the bar, now it's time to beat the bar.
Exactly. That's it, isn't it?
Awesome. So I'd love to talk to you a little about DM Fitness and about the business side of things.
Cool.
As I know that's a huge part of your life and has been your baby for the last. Well, yeah. Well, that's the question. How long have you been doing this for now?
5.5 years now.
5.5 years.
I know, 5.5 years, long time.
Amazing. And how have you seen the transition of the business go from the beginning until now? Is it gone kind of more in person to more online, or is it kind of a bit of both, or how things transcribed as time's gone by?
Cool, good question. I mean, for the first, I'd say 2-3 years of personal training. So up until 2.5 years ago, really, it was more about developing my knowledge and building a good reputation. Like any kind of industry, and especially when it comes to personal training, you've got to develop your knowledge and progress and learn and spend the time and investing in yourself for good knowledge, because there's so much bad knowledge and information out there, and people giving out bad information and stuff, and it pains me, because you see Mickey Mouse personal trainers and stuff in the gym, that have done a 6-week course. And, I always said, I was like, right, okay, I do not want to be that person that is, coming up to you. I mean, you and me can remember a guy coming up to us in, in the gym and saying, hey guys, we'll get you benching 100 kilos in about 6 weeks. Do you remember? The guy? Yeah, exactly. And so for me, it was, right, okay, I want to be very knowledgeable and very good at what I do. So I spent the first 2-3 years spending the time on courses, investing in myself, learning a lot, and developing obviously the one-to-one clients. I mean, I was pretty lucky, and because I was doing those courses, I built a good reputation quite early on. Yeah. And then for me, because I got to a point where I was so busy with one-to-one clients, it's like, right, okay, I want to do something with this. I don't want to be just a personal trainer. I want to build like a recognizable brand and create something to develop it and progress it on further. And that's where the DM Fitness came into play. And obviously had one of my clients that got him to do a PT course, and then took him on board. And then Harry and Emerald also have joined the team and kind of grown in terms of numbers there. Obviously now we do a weekly live Q&A, which has been really good, getting a couple of thousand views on that a week, which is really, really good. And then last year played around with a bit of the online coaching, running through training plans and things that were online based, and then learned more about that. So currently working with another fit pro, Souk, on developing the kind of online coaching side of things, and progressing that further, because it is a good market. And in this day and age where people haven't got a lot of time, if they can have an online based program that gets them results that they can do anytime, any place, and they've got that accountability, intuition through Facebook support and checking up on stuff, is saving them time in the gym, and they're getting the results that they want. I mean, the market itself is changing, where people are working more hours, they've got more money, but they've got less time. So they want to be able to get their results, and therefore they're spending the money on educating themselves, and having a plan that actually works is really, really important as well. Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, from when I first started as a personal trainer, I was a very nervous kind of guy coming into the industry, coming out of sixth form, college, etc. And from now, obviously, I'm very open to what I do. I'm very active on social media. I post out a lot of content and try and educate people the best I can. And it's about providing value. I see a lot of people in the industry that they post up their lifts, or they're putting an ab selfie up every day. Yeah. I'm not that guy. Instagram, okay, yes, when I was competing, I was posting up a few progress photos and things like that, but it's never been about me. Yeah. It's always been what I can provide and educate the client, and if I can better their lives.
Absolutely. If you just cancel off your camera and go back on again, it's just frozen a little bit.
Yeah. How do I do that? Well, there we go.
Little camera.
Is that better?
There he is. That's what I wanted to see.
Cool.
Yeah. So you mentioned the social media there. Was there a switching point for you, or a point in time that you thought, what, that's what I need to do. I need to push towards the social media, because I know for me mostly it's always been on social media, and I was that dude who put ab selfies and everything like that, and I actually, for some unknown reason, it worked a little bit, and I got kind of a lot more of a lot of attention in terms of kind of Instagram followers and YouTube and everything like that. But then I guess for me, I saw people like Jamie Alderson, and I saw, you know, the Grenade team in total, like that, and Team Box, and people like those people spitting out, and 3DMJ, got the list goes on. In fact, spitting out knowledge that I didn't even know about, and I started reading it, and I'm like, this is gold dust. This stuff is just the essence of bodybuilding. So I went out and I researched, then I started relaying information, and I realized that I could help so many more people that way. So I'm just wondering if there was like a moment in time that switched for you.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna lie. You know, obviously people relate, especially in the fitness industry. If you can get yourself in a good condition, you know, people will relate to that. So, you know, to get followers is a great way of doing it. You know, showing your own training or what you are currently doing is a great way of doing it. For me, you know, I guess I want to grow my Instagram and, you know, social media more so. So I am trying to put up as much content as I possibly can. You know, so I try and switch between, you know, I put up some recipes, educational stuff and things like that, and constantly putting in your faces. I mean, you know, Jamie and the likes of those guys is fantastic. The knowledge that they put out is really great, and I like it because it's honest and real. Rather than, you know, guys that kind of buy followers and things like that, you know, get social media on, they're posting out really poor content, but they've got a big following and therefore they monetize it. So people see it as a monetizing thing. And I think people focus too much on that side of things rather than actually, you know, it's more about educating people and being a no bullshit business. I think is really, really important.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. So would you say that there's an end goal for DM Fitness as a whole, as a brand, as a team?
I mean, it's just continuing developing. We've got 3 things lined up in June just on my whiteboard. So we're going into Ecotricity, which is a big local business, and doing a talk at lunchtime. So, you know, what they do is obviously a desk job. So we're looking at helping to improve, you know, what they do on a day-to-day basis to give them a healthier life, and also develop their knowledge on nutrition and training. Because people think it's hard when actually it is quite simple, but people try and overcomplicate it with too many things. So it's just progressing the educational front. We're also speaking at a business event over in Cirencester, and then we've also got a firm in Bristol that we're going down to. So there's a few events we're going down to and putting on more kind of educational stuff, and we will be putting on a lot more workshops, I think, in the local area to kind of help with that. I mean, obviously the online coaching is really developing. So now we've got quite a few different online coaching packages. So like a 6-week summer shred, 8-week online coaching, male, female. We're looking at developing more ebooks. So again, it's just providing people with more accessible content for different people.
Yeah, absolutely. Guys, I couldn't put a value on the price of knowledge like this, and it's being pumped out for free. So I urge all of you to kind of go search out the Dave Marshes of this world, the Team Boxes, all of these people, and just absorb that information and just understand that this is just a no bullshit. This shit's gonna work, you know, whether you like it or not. It's gonna work, and there's just far too much bullshit in this industry, so it's an absolute pleasure to be able to have Dave on and people like Dave on that can kind of just filter through that. I almost see it as a bit of a cult these days, kind of the no bullshit coach, and it's kind of becoming like a thing, like a trend of just having no bullshit, and it's good to see. It's good to see. I mean, for me, this latest Body Power was kind of one of the least amount of bullshitty ones that I've had in the past 3-4 years. But there's still obviously the element of sex sells everywhere. So, I mean, that's just the way it is. Unfortunately, you got to play that game.
Absolutely.
So yeah, those are my questions for you. Absolutely, thank you for answering those.
Brilliant. Cool. Right then, my questions for you. Okay, so what made you kind of step on stage in the first place or get into competing?
For me, I kind of, after I kind of stopped the whole rugby thing, for those of you that don't know, me and Dave, we played a lot of rugby. We played locally for our team's Pains, but we both played for Gloucester Academy. A pretty high level, I mean, pretty high level. I mean, Gloucester are kind of the equivalent of like the Manchester United of football. So, I mean, once that competitive edge kind of got taken out of my life, and I kind of went into kind of the training aspect and kind of building muscle, I really had no inclination of what to do in terms of building muscle. I used to just eat what I wanted and try to get as strong as I could, and I had like these kind of stupid little targets, like we said earlier, the 100 kilo bench, the 140 squat, and I think it was a 180 deadlift. They were the numbers that I only wanted. I didn't train for them. Specifically, I used to just try 1 rep every week. And I obviously built a decent physique off of that, just eating a lot of things. I mean, I've got kind of complementary genetics as well, I would say. And yeah, I saw a poster saying compete this, compete that, and I watched a few of the YouTubers who kind of competed, and I kind of looked at it a little bit. I never really kind of took an interest, and one of my friends just said, why don't you try that? So I thought, you know what, alright then. Did a 4-week cut, and I was nowhere near lean enough, but kind of looked alright for the competition because it was the first one. That was a student competition, and I came second, and I threw up like 2 seconds after I came off stage because I was so nervous, and because I had dehydrated myself for about 17 years and drunk like vodka on the day trying to dry myself out and all this like stuff I'd read online, doing like the typical peak week of like 0 carbs for 8 days and load up for this much. Oh my god, it's one of the worst things I did. And I was on stage and I could just see my friends and family screaming, and I fell in love with it there and then the ball just got rolling from then. I tried another competition, got a little bit leaner for that one. That was Fit Factor at Body Power. Then I competed in the UK BFF juniors, came second. Then I did the finals, came second, so I was second in Britain as a junior. And I was kind of on a bit of a roller coaster and a massive high, and then I think I've never just come down off that high, and I've just wanted to beat that every single year. And that's really how it's just developed, yeah.
Yeah. In terms of, okay, so you going back to your first competition and then obviously competing now, I mean, what has been the biggest change on how you structure your diet and training?
The biggest change, I actually track stuff now. I used to just wing it.
Wing it, I love that.
Yeah. I think things are a lot more planned out. Things are like, I know what I'm doing. Like, I could tell you that in 4 weeks I know that I'm going to be doing this. I'm probably going to be around this weight, and I'm probably going to be hitting these kind of numbers. And then kind of now I have a plan of action if those aren't happening. So when I was kind of doing my first preps, I would just, I want to stay as strong, so I'll just keep lifting 100 kilos for as many reps as I can, because that was the goal that I had in my head. Now it's like, no, I need to be doing these reps, and if I'm not hitting it, why aren't I hitting it? Oh, my water was off, my carbs are off, my training, I didn't sleep enough that night. Maybe I'm stressed from work. You know, all of these things all come into play. So I think just becoming aware of all the variables and becoming aware of how to manipulate them if things aren't going your way. I think that's probably the biggest thing that I've learned, and it's one of the most important things to learn, I would say, about competing. Just becoming aware of those variables, yeah.
Cool. So one thing I struggled with was actually kind of stage kind of confidence and presence. I know you spent a lot of time on posing. If you look back at your photos, you know, your posing style is completely different back then to what it is now.
Yeah.
I mean, have you got kind of any tips that you would give to kind of posing and stage presence?
Yeah, so I think there's a lot to say for classes. So my first real awakening to posing was Jamie Alderton, we talked about a little bit earlier. He was showing me the transitions, and he was showing me all these transitions and hitting the side poses, left pose, right pose, and then he put a blindfold on and then did the same thing. And it looked exactly the same. And for me, I was like, oh, okay, maybe I'll try that. So I started putting like a tie around my head or a towel around my head. And I'd film myself doing these poses, and I'd see that I'd be a little bit off. And I just kept doing it over and over again. And then eventually the transitions, second to none. So then once the transitions were down, and I didn't even need to think about them, I knew where my feet had to be because of the rules, like, you know, front foot forward. You don't come too far back, don't spread your lats too much. Or don't do bodybuilding poses. And then from there, it was just kind of twisting the angles to make me look better. You know, like, I'm not someone who looks that good front on because I've got short lats, so they attach down here rather than all the way down here. So if I'm doing this, I look very much like a bodybuilder. So what do? I tilt my hip down, I can twist in a little bit, so it kind of gives a bit of a slender hip look. Whereas for someone who was kind of lower lat insertion, you could just hit that front on pose and everyone would be like, shit, that guy stood straight on. Because everyone else goes to the side. Everyone else goes to the side. So if you're that guy who just stands out from the middle, you know, you're going to look better. I learn how to kind of deal with my weaker sides. So I have a very weak left side. I'm sure everyone else has a weaker side as well. So I spent less time on that side. I'll twist it a little bit of a different angle, and I just kind of, and then from there, once I had that routine, I just went over and over, just drove it into the ground. This whole off season, if my colleagues at work would tell me that they catch me posing nearly every single day, like I would just be doing that in my head. I'll just be going bang, bang, because I've just got it in my head. I'm just drilling it in. It's a bit of a weird obsession, but probably a bit too far.
It's a way to do it, though. It's like, it's like anything. If you practice it consistently, then you're going to get good at it.
Exactly.
Simple as that. Isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
So it's one of the things.
Yeah, exactly.
Nice. So what are your goals then for Josh Bridgman Fitness then?
Josh Bridgman Fitness. It's very similar to what you have. I want to be pumping out very good information, quality information, providing lots of content, but I kind of want to push the YouTube side a lot. I enjoy I've never been a creative person. I've never been someone to I don't want to say think outside the box. That sounds kind of dull. But I've never been someone who's good at art, who's good at DT, who's good at designing things. But in doing these YouTube videos, I've kind of found something that's really, you have to be a little bit creative, and I found something that's I really enjoy, and I kind of enjoy pursuing that kind of creative side. So I do enjoy making the lifestyle videos as well as the fitness videos. So just the combination of growing subscribers, growing followers, growing information I can put out, growing the creativity that I can put out, growing the quality of content, and just kind of making that one big ball of community.
Nice.
Eventually.
Yeah, I mean, the community thing is really, really important in this day and age, and creating a good following that you can help and educate people is obviously one thing I focus a lot of my time on. And it's consistency as well. You've got to be consistent with anything you do. So, constantly putting out good content and stuff so people are getting what they want.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool.
Awesome.
That's about it for all my questions.
Yeah, so we covered a lot, covered a good amount. If any of you guys have any questions, just comment in the comment box below, and I'm hope Dave will be able to answer some of the questions. I'll be able to answer some of the questions. I would very much like to do this on a frequent basis with someone like Dave. We can maybe just do a topic and just do a little power 15-20 minute topic. If you're interested, I just told him that out of here, so in case out of the blue, and we can really kind of delve into some deep topics, and we can, rather than kind of briefly getting over them, we can get into the science of it, and we can talk about that a lot. So if that's something you'd like to see, drop a like, comment down below, and all of Dave's socials will be on the screen right now. They're going to be in the description box. Go check him out. It's someone who I refer to my clients to go look at his posts and just understand this a little bit better. Things are very clean, things are very organized, things are very consistent, and they're very, very good educational points. So definitely head over to see Dave. Appreciate you for coming on, mate.
Mate, a pleasure to be on here, and I look forward to seeing you.
We're going to cut out the last minute.
Are we good?
We're good now.
Oh, God. I was like, please say that hasn't just crashed. Yeah, no, absolutely, mate. Pleasure, as always. And yeah, look forward to seeing you at the Birmingham show.
Be good, mate. Nice one. I appreciate it.
Cool.